Reading of God's Word, Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes, it is they who stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war arise against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I've asked of the Lord, and that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He'll lift me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tents sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. They said, seek my face, and my heart says to you, your face, Lord, do I seek. Hide not your face from me. Turn not your servant away in anger, for you have been my help. Cast me not off. Forsake me not, O God of my salvation. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me in. Teach me your ways, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Give me not up to the will of my adversary, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they breathe out violence. But I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do this evening, to learn to wait on the Lord. You're not going to like me because of it, because waiting on the Lord is difficult. It costs a lot to wait on the Lord, but you never regret it. And every time you should be waiting on the Lord and you don't, you will regret it. And that regret will haunt you. And you wake up at 2 in the morning, you can't get back to sleep. You remember those times when you could have paid the price, but you didn't. God is different than us. And sometimes the difference is jarring, and it's hard to understand it. God is really into delayed gratification. And we are really into instant gratification. God said, Abraham, you're my guy. And I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Well, Lord, I'm 50, 75. Lord, I'm in my 90s. Now's the time. What? Now? That was a long wait. No, it wasn't. And I will never, never forget you or your children. So after they go to Egypt, 400 years later, the Lord comes to deliver them. And Jesus ascended into heaven and sat down at the right hand of God. And he said, I'm coming soon. It's 2,000 years. Now, I'm beginning to get a little perspective. And many of you can probably share it with me. Isn't it amazing how fast the years have gone by? Remember raising your kids? And it just went, boom, in a twinkle. And they were gone. And my grandkids, now they're grown up, and they're getting their driver's license, they're getting their jobs, and they're going out in the world. I expect in 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be a great-grandfather. I won't have to wait as long as Biden. And it's just amazing how fast time goes. But it's a thing of perspective, isn't it? Now, as I said, in life, we push against instant gratification versus an act of faith that requires us to wait on the Lord. We can seek temporary change in how I feel versus building my house upon the rock. When it's temporary change, I'm building my house upon the sand, and it's going to collapse on me. Hebrews 11:6 tells us without faith it's impossible to please God. And faith is very important to please God. He puts each one of us in situations that require a faith response. But often we fail him and choose a fleshly response because the fleshly response makes me feel different right now, immediately. And waiting on the Lord means I have to endure in situations that I don't like enduring in. Jesus practiced waiting on the Lord. After he was baptized, the Spirit led him to the wilderness. He was tempted for 40 days. Toward the end of that time, Satan comes and he says, "You've been here 40 days. You haven't eaten a thing." "You're right, I haven't. But you know, you are God, so you can tell those stones to become bread." And Jesus, this is a little paraphrase, just go along with me. Jesus said, "You know, I could. And you know, if I did, it would be the best bread ever. Ask those people at the wedding when I turned the water into wine. There was never a better wine. I could smell what that bread would smell like. It would be delicious. And I'm hungry. But the Lord was pleased to bring me here, and I'm going to wait on him, because man was not meant to live on bread alone." So the devil's thinking, "Lord, try again. I know something he really, really misses, and that's his glory." Because he laid aside his glory to be born of the virgin. So he takes him up in the air and he shows him all the kingdoms of the earth, and he says, "I'll give it all to you. Think of all the glory that will return to you. Wouldn't that be great?" And Jesus says, "I'm looking forward to the day when my glories return to me. It's going to be a glorious, glorious day. And I'm happy to wait until the Lord says it's time for that to happen. And besides, it's written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only." And so he took him up to the pinnacle of the temple and said, "Cast yourself down, because it's written, the angels give charge over you, lest you stub your toes upon a rock." He said, "Whew, that would be a rush, wouldn't it? To cast myself off and fall, and then at the very last second, the angels come and catch me, and not a hair of my head is mussed. But I think I'll just wait on the Lord, because it's written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." It was a temptation. There was something about who Jesus was and the circumstance he found himself in that made what Satan was offering desirable to one degree or another. But Christ says, no, it's okay. As hard as it is to be where I'm at, I'll stay there until the Lord gets me to a better place. And then he asks us to do the same thing. Abraham, our father in the faith, believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. It's by grace through faith that we are saved from the wrath of God. Having our faith strengthened should be a priority in our life. Faith is a gift of God. But after he grants us faith, he strengthens us through the trials of our life. So James comes and says, "Count it all joy, my brother, when we encounter various trials." And I go, "Yeah, count it all joy when you encounter various trials." I don't like that. I don't want to find joy in trials. And then you're putting yourself at odds with God. Our brother Stephen shared with us from Romans 5, where you're saying, don't be afraid of the trials of life. They're doing good things in your life. I don't want good things done in my life. I want this trial gone. Well, that's what we often say. Now, we don't say it that bluntly, but that's what we say. And so let's look at Isaiah 40, verse 27 to 31. This is the classic passage on waiting on the Lord. It's the first passage I studied when I began to learn this concept that waiting on the Lord was a good thing, even though it's hard to do. It says in Isaiah 40, verse 27, "Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right has been disregarded by my God?" This is when we feel sorry for ourselves, and I'm saying, my life isn't what it ought to be, and God doesn't even care. He doesn't even pay attention to me. I'm just a nobody to God. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. The poem I learned as a kid is, I guess I'll just eat worms. And then there's a little song that followed that, which always grossed my sister out, so it was fun. And then he responds, "What do you mean? Your way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by God." He says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable." Don't besmirch the person of God. He knows everything going on in your life. He knows how hard it was. Jesus Christ himself, has been tempted in every way as we have, yet without sin. He understands what it's like to be a human being and go through the trials he's asking you to go through. Because every trial you experience has been experienced by Christ when he was here on the earth. Well, not always the exact thing, but something analogous to it. Something so similar that Christ understands experientially what it's like to be where you're at. He has compassion and pity, but sometimes he says, it's still good for you to be there. Not good in the sense of pleasant, because it's not pleasant. And you should want to get to a better place. Working hard to get to a better place is a good thing to do. But when that's not happening as fast as we'd like it to happen, we have to trust. So we're encouraged. It says he gives power to the faint. To him who has no might, he increases strength. But the strength he increases is not physical. I can't run as fast as I did when I was 20 years old, and I doubt that I ever will again. That doesn't mean the Lord doesn't give me strength, because the way he strengthens me is to give me a spiritual strength. Yes, this life is going to take all my physical, my bodily strength away from me. But when my soul passes out of this body into heaven, I'm going to be a very different person. And the strengths that God gives me spiritually in this life are going to come along with me. It's the only thing I can take with me is my growth in grace. And he says, here's, Ken's, another opportunity for you to grow in grace so that you'll be richer in heaven for all eternity. I don't want to be richer in heaven for all eternity. I want what I want right now. I have said that before. Well, not that blatantly, not in those words. I probably would have woken up and recognized how foolish I was being. But I wrestled against waiting on God. I suppose we all have. He gives power to the faint. To him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But those who wait on the Lord will gain their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And that can be us. Let's understand this in a practical manner. Life at times is hard. At times it's just really good and delightful. But sometimes it's really hard. And you have to cope with it. You don't get a choice. This is what the Lord has put in your path, and you have to find a way through it. So how will I cope with it? Well, I have personally found that drinking more than I should is a great way to cope with it. Just that first sip, and I feel better already. And of course, seeking comfort in food is another good way. Sometimes you can cut yourself so the physical pain masks the emotional pain. You can lose yourself in porn, video games, gambling. There's all these apps now that make it so easy. And you can bet on anything. And it's, man, maybe this, I'm going to win enough to get out of the hole I dug for myself. Yeah, that's it. Oh, not that. Well, the next time, I'm going to win enough to get out of the hole I dug for myself even deeper by the last time. And see, you can keep believing the same foolish lie and get in deeper and deeper and deeper. But what's the benefit of them? Every single thing. Drinking, food, cutting yourself, porn, video games, gambling, the list could go on. It makes an immediate difference in the way I feel. Or I could say, Lord, my life is hard, but I choose to trust in you. If you think I should be in this situation a little while longer, then so be it. Christ wrestled the trust in the Lord. He wrestled so hard, he prayed so fervently that he sweat blood. Lord, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. And he prayed it so fervently that he bled. I've never fought that hard against sin, but that's what waiting on the Lord looks like. So David wrote Psalm 27. I'm not going to exegete the psalm. I'm using it to illustrate the topic for tonight, which is waiting on the Lord. To the best of my knowledge, he wrote it when he was 66 years old, and he was on the run for his son Absalom. Absalom led a rebellion, and by the time David heard about it, he only had time to run. He had the clothes on his back and absolutely nothing else. And it was worse than when he was on the run from Saul. Not only because his own son was persecuting him, but because he had much less preparation to go. And it was happening all over again. His reputation was being destroyed. He was trying to be killed. Not that he had done anything wrong. And it was worse. And that night, when he got out of Jerusalem and found a safe place to rest for a few hours, he wrote Psalm 27. And the final verse says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and let your heart take courage." Yes, wait for the Lord. The first part of the psalm is David seeking to exercise his faith instead of being carried away with his fears, anger, uncertainty. Was David going to be led by the emotion of the moment, as he was with Bathsheba, or would he wait on the Lord? Now, if we back up 33 years, David was 33 years old, and he was on the run from Saul. Now, as he and his men were living in the wilderness, they acted kind of as an unofficial sheriff. They would take on the Philistines. If there were bandits, they would go and take care of the bandits and things. And word came to them that a city, which was called Keilah, was under attack by the Philistines. And so he inquired of the Lord, should we go up? And the Lord said, yes, go up. So he told his men, the Lord said we should go up and help them. And his men said, David, there's 3 times as many of them than there are us. What can we do? David said, well, I'll ask the Lord again. He said, shall we go up? The Lord said, yes, I'll give them into your hands. So they went up. They were at a great disadvantage, but the Lord gave them into their hands, and they had a wonderful victory. And the citizens threw open the gate. It was a double-walled city. They threw open the gate and welcomed them in. They had been living rough in the wilderness, in caves, in the open land. They had food and drink and the comforts of life. It was great. And the citizens were thankful for their deliverance. He hadn't experienced a lot of that. People usually got mad at him when he did the right thing. And so it was wonderful. Then a spy came. He was on their side and said, Saul heard that you were here. He's coming with a large force. So they inquired of the Lord and said, when Saul comes, will the men of the city give us over to David? And the Lord said, oh yeah, they will. So they left on the run again. And he wrote Psalm 55. Listen to the difference between the Psalms. Listen to my prayer, God. Do not hide yourself from my pleading. Give your attention to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint and surely distracted because of the voice of the enemy, because of the pressure of the wicked. For they bring down trouble upon me in anger. They hold a grudge against me. My heart is in anguish within me. And the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horrors overwhelm me. I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I'd fly away and be at rest. Behold, I'd flee far away. I'd spend my nights in the wilderness. I would hurry to my place of refuge from the stormy winds and the heavy gale. Are you surprised that was the reaction? Where's David? He's about 33 years old, and he was learning how to wait on the Lord. He wasn't very good at it yet, but that's what he wanted to do. What is he saying? Lord, I'm looking to you. You're my hope. You're the one in whom I trust. 33 years later, David's been through a lot. The Lord has come to him frequently and said, David, good news today. Guess what you get to do? Wait on the Lord. First guess, great. And he practiced it many times. And now his son is rebelling against him. And he runs for his life. He has no idea what the future is going to hold for him. And he writes Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is a stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes, it is they who stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war rise against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. You see the peace he has made? Lord, I may be in your house here, or I may be in the next few hours in your house there. And that's okay. That's my chief desire, is to be with you. And no one can take that away from me. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Waiting on the Lord was something he had practiced. He paid his dues. And this time, when it came to time to wait on the Lord, it wasn't as hard as it was in the previous times. But we have to pay our dues. We have to make that terrible choice. It's 9 o'clock at night. And Joe really wants a drink. He promised his wife he would stop. He's been drinking way too much. She's even threatened to leave if he didn't stop. And that's the last thing he wants. He dearly loves his wife. But it's 9 o'clock at night. He's fidgety. He just feels how much comfort that drink would bring him. And he tries to distract himself, but all he can think about is, I really want a drink. He says, no, Lord. No, it's okay. I'm going to wait on you. If waiting on you means I go through a time of feeling miserable, that's okay. Christ did in the garden. I can too. I'm not listening to the flesh. I've dug a hole for myself and I've built up a habit that now I have to break. And man, is it costing me to break this habit. I want to break the habit, and the last thing I want to do in the world is break the habit. That's right. God's opposed to a double-minded man, isn't he? But Lord, I'm going to wait. Jeremiah, in the book of Lamentations, walks us through what waiting on the Lord is about. In Lamentations chapter 3, verse 25 and 26, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man that he should bear the yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone in silence when it's laid on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him give his cheek to the one who strikes. Let him be filled with insults, for the Lord will not cast off forever. For though he causes grief, he will have compassion, according to the abundance of his steadfast love. See, Jeremiah got to the place where in the most miserable times of life, he could say, this is good, because the Lord put me here. It's not pleasant. I'll be so much happier when this burden passes, but it's good to be here. And so he says, it's good to put your mouth in the dust. It's good to be humbled sometimes. I never liked being humbled. Not my favorite thing. I think it's one of the chief Christian graces. Christ excelled at it. And if Christ excelled at it, then I should strive to excel at it as well. But it always comes at such a price. It's good to put your mouth in the dust. It's good to turn your cheek to the smiter. It's good to bless those who curse you. Bless and curse not. It's good to overcome evil with good. It's good to bless those that curse you. It's good to pray for those who desperately use you. These are the things we learn in the Scriptures. In the book of Philippians, Paul picks up this topic, and he tells us in chapter 1, verse 29, for it has been granted to you that for the sake of Christ you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. What a grand verse. For it's been granted to you to believe in Jesus Christ, the doctrine of election right there. But it's also been granted to you, wait, it gets better, to suffer with him. Isn't that great? Well, see, that's the way we have to train ourselves to see it. Our first reaction to that is, no, suffering is never good. And yet we look at Christ and we see suffering throughout his life, and it was good. And Christ asked us to share in his suffering. In chapter 3, verse 10, he tells us why. Paul prays and says, oh, that I may know him and the fellowship of his suffering. Now, he wasn't praying for suffering. He had plenty of that. He's saying, whenever I suffer, may I immediately connect it with the sufferings of Christ. May I see its holy purpose. See, suffering without purpose is really hard to continue in. Suffering with a purpose is very good. I have known women who were having a difficult pregnancy, And for 8 months, they had to lay in their bed. 8 months they were on bed rest. That's really hard. But they said, but I could lose my baby. And when they were just thinking, I just want to get out and walk. I hate these four walls. I want to go someplace. They go, no, my baby's worth it. I'm going to do it. And they did it. And they had the baby, and everything was well. And they never regretted an hour in that bed afterwards. It was hard at the time. I know cancer patients, and they go and they get their chemotherapy, and it's miserable, makes them sick for days. And then the next appointment comes and they go again. Why? Well, because they have a hope. This treatment's going to kill the cancer before the cancer kills me. And a lot of times it does. And Christ says, have a hope. You are experiencing my life through this trial. If you have trouble understanding how the trial you're undergoing is connected to Christ, come and talk to me or one of the elders or Pastor Eric or Juhan, and we'll walk you through the scriptures and show you sufferings that were like unto what you are enduring now. You need that hope. And that's the hope we have. So Jesus practiced waiting on the Father. 40 days of temptation and fasting. He prayed in the garden before his death, agonizingly, wanting things to be different, but accepting the will of God. Many times he stepped aside for a time of prayer. Life is going to push you to the edge. I think it probably already has for most of us. And the Lord was there, and he cared, and he took us through. Let's be mindful. I can always make the choice to wait on the Lord, and it's an excellent choice. It's not doing nothing. It's an exercise of faith that's very pleasing to God and brings great glory to him. Let's pray.